election process. Pardon me. Barack Obama has been elected for a second four-year term in office, beating Republican Mitt Romney after a tense campaign characterized by deep-seated issues that affect the American people and its foreign policy. Many African countries, including Uganda, are aspiring to operate under a democratic dispensation similar to that in the US of A, and this election has provided many lessons from how the candidates were chosen by political parties, the management of the process, and how the candidates eventually received the results. Many people are, however, still puzzled by the system after learning that not all citizens elect the president, given the fact that in the US they consider the popular vote, but emphasis is put on the electoral college vote, which determines the presidential winner. As campaigns raged on, many Ugandans were mesmerized by the live television debates, and many wondered if Uganda can have the same standards in the near future to ensure that an election is based on issues rather than rhetoric. The level of transparency and political maturity among the top contenders has also left many talking, especially the mere fact that the defeated candidate can't pick the phone and concede defeat even before the Electoral Commission has declared the final results. For Uganda, there are critical lessons to take at each step, and tonight on Spectrum, we look at the US election process to point out some lessons that can be taken to make our process more democratic and acceptable. Our guests tonight, Mr. Oscar Kihika, Senior Partner at Byenkya, Kihika and Company Advocates. You're most welcome, Mr. Kihika.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow listeners.
We're also joined by Mr. Sammy Gwada from the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, with much knowledge and understanding of political history and globally. You're most welcome, Mr. Gwada.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
We expect to be joined by Honorable Vincent Kyamadidi, Mujuni, Rwampara County MP. He'll join us shortly as we get deeper into this discussion. Mr. Kihika, how does America elect its president?
Well, it's a little bit of a complicated process, but I'll try and summarize this in the best I can within 3 to 5 minutes, with your permission, Mr. Moderator. Now, the voter in the United States, unlike Uganda, and I'm going to make comparisons here. In Uganda, we elect our president directly. That is to say, on election day, my constituency is in Akawa division, Mutungo. So when I go, I look at the ballot paper, I have a choice between, the last time we elected, just to give you an example, I had a choice between Museveni and
Dr.
Besigye. I'll confess, I voted for Museveni.
Yes.
So they will count the votes, right? And they will count my vote, and they will count the votes of my other fellow citizens who voted for SCJ, and they will make a simple collation. Whoever wins the
biggest number of individual votes,
yes, is the one who is elected president. In the United States, the system is different. The voter does not directly elect their president. It's what they call an indirect election. Perhaps to explain this to Ugandans, if you recall, the time that we were electing people to the CA,
Constituent Assembly, March 1993.
In March 1993.
28th of March.
Exactly. We were electing people to represent us in an electoral college, which was supposed to be discussing the Constitution on our behalf. Okay? Not all of us would go and discuss
in conference.
The election of a president in the United States is a little bit like that, like the Constituent Assembly. When, for example, for argument's sake, for example, like if I am a resident in California and I've got a choice between voting for Mitt Romney, a Republican, and Obama, a Democrat. When I vote for the Republican, or the Democrat, and it so happens that so many other fellow Californians agree with me that the person we should elect is Obama, the Democrat. The person that takes the majority of the votes in the state of California, right, is allocated what they call representatives, otherwise known as
electors.
The electors,
yes.
Okay, in simple terms, really, but they are called delegates. These delegates are sent by the electors in California to go and elect in what they call an electoral college. And there are different, the delegates are assigned, each state is assigned different numbers of delegates.
Yes.
And this is based on population. California, and I said with California for a particular reason, California is the largest, is the most popular state in the United States. Therefore, it has the most number of delegates. Okay?
55
delegates.
Yes.
Florida, I think, is the second most.
29.
Yeah, which is 29, and so on and so forth.
Right.
I think Virginia was what?
One of the smallest.
And finally, Ohio, which was
the swing
states. We shall come to that when it comes to the swing states.
Yes.
All right. So, then what happens is this: the United States has got 50 states. The experts that were doing the calculated that for any candidate to take to be elected president of the United States, he must have a minimum of 270 delegates behind him.
That's because the total number of delegates is 583.
Yes, exactly.
And to get it, you have 538 actually. And to get to get a simple majority, you need 270.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now, it is those 200. It is those delegates that will actually vote you in as president of the United States. People are probably asking, why is this? It has got a historical perspective.
Let's get the history.
Very, very briefly. United States got its independence in 1776, long before telephones were invented, long before the train was invented, long before cars were invented. United States in 1776 was about technologically was at the same level as Africa. Right? There were no roads, there was no infrastructure. So that meant that when they chose to elect their leader in November.
Yes.
These people
they still do the same thing 200 years later.
Yes, they
have not amended their constitution.
They have not amended their constitution in as far as the election of their leaders.
As we do that sometimes.
Yes, go on. What else we do? So what happens was that when California would elect their president in November, the 6th of November, they would then delegate the
6th of November 200 years ago, 6th of November right now.
Yes, right now. Okay? Then they would delegate their
electors.
Their electors.
To go to Washington.
Now remember, to move from California to go to Washington is 4,000 kilometers. That
from
will
the
take
east coast to the west coast.
Yes,
the west coast to the
west coast to the east coast. That will take 2 months. So the framers of the United States Constitution determined that the delegates would be given 2 months to travel to Washington or whichever place where the Electoral College would meet, or the CA would meet, to sit down and say, the state of California, once they all met, what is the message from the voters? The message from our voters is we have voted for Obama, so we are presenting our 55 electoral
to
votes
Obama.
Florida, we are presenting our 29 votes to, and so on and so forth, until the 270
You have all of them, then they know who the president is. Today it's instant. You know it from the network, the television network.
Exactly.
You've given us an excellent background.
I hope.
No, you've explained it's complicated, but you've given us a very, very elaborate explanation. Mr. Gwada, is this a good system?
I think...
First of all, comment for us about how they can do this, and 200 years later it hasn't changed.
There is the dreams of the forefathers, which the Americans hold very dearly. Two, they have been rocked by civil war that has managed to consolidate the focus on the need for peace and coexistence. But most of all, their current constitution reflects their history, their geography, and their culture, as you have just said. That all comes up. You will find that, in comparison, most African states today are using systems that have been superimposed on them by colonial leadership. And as such, the systems that we have do not reflect our histories, our cultures, or our geography. Now, it is a good system because it has been found to be fair over the years. Once or twice it has been subjected to great test. For example, in the case of Al Gore and George Bush, it was subjected to great test. But in a situation where institutions are also very strong, and in a union which nearly each and every state that came and negotiated its joining of the union with its own focuses, it becomes very difficult to say that one state or the other will, for example, sit or benefit at the expense of another. 3 is that America has benefited or is largely an immigrant nation.
Yes.
For example, in terms of
100%.
Almost 100%. In terms of leadership, we found that J.F. Kennedy, who was the first and only Catholic president of the U.S., was Irish, and probably just second or third generation in America.
Okay, about third generation.
You will find that Ronald Reagan was Scottish, and Obama is actually...
He comes from Kogelo.
From Luo. He's Luo.
He's Luo.
Yeah, he's Luo.
Yeah.
So you find this generation, you find these convergence of people from all over the world.
So we know Kenyan rules America. Go on.
Yes. Now, those are factors that you must consider, that eventually people found that all these people of all immigration, of all sources came and eventually converged. The current election was largely determined by Latinos, Hispanics, African Americans, and most migrant communities.
The swing voters.
Yes. And when
and
you
women, by the way.
and married women, single women, and the educated upper class Americans, which, when you converge together, created the majority that Obama used. The lower uneducated white Americans largely did not vote for Obama across the board, except in the states of Ohio, Michigan, and I think one other. Virginia. Why? Because of the auto industry bailout in the early years of Obama, and an act which Mitt Romney had hugely opposed.
Yes.
And he came out as somebody who was unsympathetic and had no sense of empathy or sympathy for suffering brethren. And that, in many ways, is what largely swung Obama's victory, Ohio and the northwestern states, towards Obama. But that also brings in certain critical features in terms of future thinking for Uganda and for other nations within the region. Just how much thought and how much thought do we put into the development of political structures? Is there anything that we say that ultimately works within, or that takes care of our ethnicities, our clan systems, and that also at the same time reflects our geography and our history?
We'll get to that, but maybe before we get there, can you tell us subjectively, do you think it's a good system? I say subjectively because there's no black and white.
Yes. I think it is a good system, one, based on the expanse of that nation, based on the different peoples who make that nation, and based on the fact that historically it has been the way forward. And in many ways it mitigates many other issues, the distances, the differences, the different races, the backgrounds, the income levels. It sort of converges them and brings them into one common union that many people find acceptable and find that has worked over 200 years, and really there has been no pressure to question the system. That is most important. You see, you find that in most of our states, the systems of elections are consistently being subjected to pressure and being subjected to changes here and there. That has happened consistently with most of these nations.
All right.
And that's probably one, because nobody has questioned the system has been efficient. It has not been subjected to much pressure, except recently in the case of the Al Gore Bush case, which was not too much of an issue, but it raised certain points. However, there was a point that President Obama raised today in his victory speech in terms of electoral reform.
Yes.
That there has to be the government has to find a way to reduce the hours that people spend lining up to vote.
They should be able to vote at home.
Yes, they should be able to vote at home, or define other systems that may make it less cumbersome.
I saw a woman who was driving from a neighborhood of basically ferrying voters in her own private car. Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. What lessons can Africa and Uganda in particular take from the just concluded U.S. election process? Our guests tonight, Mr. Oscar Kihika, senior partner at Byenkya Kihika and Company Advocates, also a former president of the Uganda Law Society, and Mr. Sammy Gwada Ogot, from the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, a very, very knowledgeable man on many of these issues. You will be able to call in at some stage and contribute to this discussion. I would like both of you to talk to us about what African countries can learn from this American process. Mr. Kihika.
Yeah, but having my colleague having said that, there's one caveat. You see, the system, however, has a certain weakness, in the sense that, as was the case in Al Gore, and that was the third instance in the whole of American history. It doesn't necessarily mean
the previous time it had happened was more than 100 years.
Yes,
it all happened in the 1800s.
It's in the
1900s.
It was actually in the 19th century. If I can remember well my history, on 2 occasions in the 19th century, 16 years apart.
Three occasions.
Yes, 2 occasions. The third was actually Al Gore, where the winning candidate had less votes than
popular votes.
The less popular votes than the losing candidate, right? So there's a bit of unfairness in this system.
Right.
So let's go to Al Gore. Al Gore had actually in 2000 had more votes than George Bush. But George Bush had more electoral votes. That's how he became the president of the United States. That created a number of a lot of debating points. But the Americans decided that no, the system, for historical reasons, and like my colleague has stated, it works, and we are satisfied that this is the system that we want, and I think we're happy with it. And they saw no reason to amend the Constitution. In our jurisdiction, we find that a little bit hard to accept.
People will be on the streets.
Yes, and like he says, my colleague says here, really, you see, democracy has to be developed organically. You know. When I was explaining the history behind why they have electoral votes in the United States,
it's logical. It's logical.
It's based on
and they've maintained it.
Yes. In Uganda, just to give an example, to travel from one end of Uganda's borders to the other,
Kisoro to Karamoja,
Kisoro to Tororo, the Busia, you can do it in what?
Half a day.
I've ever done that.
One day.
Forget about one day.
8 hours.
Less than 8 hours. You can do it in 6 hours. I've done it before.
Breaking some traffic rules. Go on.
Yes, I've actually done it before. But in United States, to move from General Eisenhower, who was one of the top generals in the Second World War, and was the architect of the interstate road network in the United States, it took him 62 days,
2 months.
Even with technology in 1940s, to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's when he decided, and you see, for him, he had observed that the highways that Hitler had built in Germany, the autobahns.
Yes.
So when he was elected president of the United States, let me tell you, the modern road network that you see in the United States today was actually built under Eisenhower as recently as the 50s. Okay, so why I'm giving you all this background is to show you why the Americans have adopted the electoral system, because it reflected what
he just mentioned.
What he just mentioned.
Geography, culture.
Now this is where this is the appeal that I make to the scholars.
Yes.
In Uganda, particularly in Uganda, the ones that keep on pandering for democracy per se. No, look. You see, it has got to be organically grown.
Right.
I think this is. I suppose we shall come to that later on.
Mr. Gwada, give us some lessons from the American process. Very briefly, 2 minutes.
One was integrity of the process. That came out as a very key factor. Though in one place there was a complaint about when you vote electronically, you press Obama and it appears Mitt Romney. That was one complaint. But however, the integrity of the process was very highly rated. 2, the scrutiny, the ruthless scrutiny on the individuals. personal credibility is a key factor in terms of leadership.
Where you went to nursery school.
Where you went to nursery school, what you did 5 years ago, what you are hiding
40
years ago, what you are hiding, what you haven't said.
How many women you have.
How many women you have, how you look after your family, how you relate to people. All these begin to count when you seek this leadership. Where you have invested. Romney was consistently accused of taking jobs to China.
Yes.
Then there was the issue of policies that came out very critically. Obama being wanting to reform the immigration system. And Romney's major fallacy was that he focused on the economy because he had very little else. But unfortunately for him, within 6 months to the election, the economy started improving consistently.
Right.
Prices of houses, housing prices began to rise. The economy started showing signs of life.
Yes.
And suddenly he found himself with very little stick in his hand. Now the issue of issue-based politics was also a very critical lesson. While there were, of course, very serious catfights at sometimes at personal level, but the issues were never lost as the key focuses that would swing the vote whichever way it went.
All right, we have to go for a break. Okay. But I mean, when you mentioned about, of course, the last election there was the Joe the Plumber. How you relate to these common men?
Yes.
And the British election, the former Prime Minister apparently lost a lot of votes and eventually the office because of this statement in his motor vehicle. He had finished speaking to the ordinary people. Then he went in there and it was clear he hadn't connected to them. And then began to ask, this woman, she's a bigoted woman. How did you get me connected to this? And it literally cost him that election. So the things you do in private should match what you do in public, and that's what we learn from these Western democracies.
I think it's a major factor too.
What you do in the dark, actually what you do in the open.
Indeed.
This is Spectrum. We'll be back.
Discover the new invigorating taste of Red Vodka Lemon. Red Vodka Lemon. Reinvent the night. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Excuse me, guys. Let me through, please. What? Check this guy. Goodness, dude, what are you doing? Get real. Just move. Just what? A little bit. Man, what are you doing bringing a cow into the sitting room? It's just for when I want milk. Just what? Just please move. Let it come and sit here.
What's wrong with this guy? You cannot keep a cow in your home, but you can get the freshness of its milk straight from the farm into your home. Get fresh dairy milk for freshness straight from the farm every day. Fresh Diary, so fresh.
Ça va? Hello? My name is Kogole Andemina, very serious Congolese tailor. People see me when they want to look good. People leave my shop looking like superstars of TV. But however much I make you look beautiful or even sexy like me, I cannot change the person inside, the real you. Kind of like Uganda Waraji. It has this beautiful look, but inside they have maintained the same old spirit that we know. The same old spirit we have known for many years in a new suit. New look. Oh, you need to try it.
Enjoy the new look Uganda Waraji. The same Ugandan spirit with a new look. Uganda Waraji. Same spirit, new look.
Uganda Waraji.
Excessive consumption of alcohol is harmful to your health. Not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. What lessons can Africa and Uganda in particular take from the just concluded U.S. election process? Our guests tonight, Mr. Oscar Kihika, Senior Partner at Byenkya, Kihika and Company Advocates, and Mr. Sammy Gwada Ogot from the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, Pan-Africanist scholar as well. You will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Mr. Gwada Ogot, when do whites begin to vote a black man that overwhelmingly? The U.S. has only 14% of minorities, the blacks and all the other people. They're just 14%. How would 86% vote a black man?
I think there is a growing phenomenon in terms of leadership. across the world where you are getting unions and support from people who come from really disparate backgrounds.
Disparate means radically different.
Radically different backgrounds. But you find that the convergence of most of these people is not based on the skin color, but it is also based on the conditions, particularly the economic conditions of the day. Because that is why you're able to distinguish that the upper class and the more educated Americans, the white Americans, voted for Obama, and probably because of what Obama represents for their nation and for themselves. That was one. And then you find that the less educated Americans who earn less than $75,000 per year, most of them voted for Romney, because Romney was campaigning on a platform of purity, more or less, like the Republicans would have it, because the Republican Party represents the blue-eyed boy of American politics, generations of wealth. You iconize the American dream, blue eyes and everything. And the Democrats have traditionally been the party where those who you'd call upstarts are able to come, the Dukakises of the day, Michael Dukakis, Bill Clinton, who had no clear parental heritage. In other words, he was of a single mother. Barack Obama, black, and all those kind of. And what was the other guy called? Before Clinton, there was
what? George Bush?
No, all this. Anyway, that's
the from a kind of dynasty.
That is the that dynasty focuses within the Republican Party is that there must be a sense of history. Which school did you go to? If you're in Britain, they'll ask you if you went to Eton.
That's in
yes,
the Republicans,
conservatives, and yes. So that factors in.
Yeah.
Now, when it gets to the American system, you get a situation where there is an evolution in terms of values and value. Leadership is spreading, and not just in America. I had given you the example the other day of the South Africans voting in Jacob Zuma, who is the son of a nanny, and who never went to a classroom for a single day, and removing Thabo Mbeki, the son of Governor Mbeki, and Skion of one of the members of the Mbeki dynasty. Likewise, when you look at Obama overcame in his initial role. He overcame the McCain dynasty that was supported by the Bush dynasty, and even internally the Clinton dynasty. Now these variations come in, and based on this growing wave, you are finding that people are able to converge on much more than skin color.
The tribe is being redefined.
It's being redefined. Authorities being redefined. Identities are being redefined. Who are we? I mean, and that is what has helped Obama.
Of course, there's the issue of parties as well.
And of course, the issue of age came in very critical in the American election.
Mr. Kihika.
If I can explain it in a more simpler way, perhaps, it has to be looked at at two levels. Number one, the demographics of America is changing, and is changing very rapidly.
Yes.
Up until my colleague already mentioned to you that the United States is, and Canada for that matter, actually is a nation of immigrants. Now, the majority of the immigrants going to the United States were actually the Caucasians, the Europeans, right? And then what followed? What followed later on? You know, you had the Hispanics,
yes,
the people from
South America,
and then you had us, the Africans, who are forcefully pushed into
taken to the promised land.
And now the Hispanics historically and the Africans, the African Americans were seen as second and third class citizens
in the past.
And it was the Caucasians who really dominated the politics of the day in the United States, and for a very long time.
The whites, yes.
Okay, and not only the Caucasians, but the male Caucasians. All right, it has to be remembered that women in the United States were only allowed to vote in the last century.
I think 69?
1919.
1919? It was the blacks that were voting in voting rights in 60 years.
Very recently. Yeah. But what's been happening is that the demographics, that is to say, these so-called minorities,
yes,
the blacks, the Hispanics, the women, the disadvantaged class are increasing.
Yes.
Have actually increased and outnumbered the Caucasian male, so to speak. And this is where you take your hats off to Obama, the Obama campaign, because what happened was that they targeted this class of people, the so-called up to now underprivileged,
yes,
who now actually are in the majority.
It's true.
Yes.
And that is why Obama Obama succeeded in 2008 and 2000 and recently. Now, the difference between the Republican Party, which has got to re-examine itself, its values now, is that up until now, the Republican Party has not taken black Americans seriously. Although the Republican Party was responsible for freeing Africans from slavery.
That's true.
All right? Okay. It has not taken women's rights seriously. It has become ultra-conservative. Therefore, it's not taking into account the rights of the minorities, like the what do you call it, the gays and stuff like that, who are growing in number and in influence. Okay. So I think that gives you the changing perception and landscape.
Mr. Gwada, but will Obama focus more on Africa in his last term? He didn't give us too much attention. Ghana, Egypt.
I think you must look at Obama's last 4 years in terms of, one, the searing pressure from the Republican Party, the Tea Party conservatives, who ruthlessly hounded Obama.
Taxed enough already.
They ruthlessly hounded him. And you also note that, as one individual said today, that the conservatives brought out so much bad in them, and that bad eventually brought out so much good among the African Americans. There was a situation where even life-size boards of President Obama were being laced, were not just defaced. There was a lasso put on his neck with the words "hang the nigger," and all these things brought about a re-examination of the Americans. Now, Obama would not have made. Then there was also the issue of the consistent issue with posters and placards, "Go back to Kenya." Now, that was a major focus of the campaign. In the second term, he has more elbow room to pursue. He will not meet the electorate again. He has now to work towards cementing his legacy.
Right.
That is a major focus. Now, in that regard, one, his very presence and the confirmation and his reconfirmation as the leader of America in itself gives great confidence to the African, in the sense that being the first Afro-American to lead the United States, had he failed in his first term, would have been another black man in the overall ability of the white man of the black man to govern again.
Would have been another black man to have 2 terms.
And yes, to confirm that you're actually able to do it.
All right.
That is one important factor. 2, I believe that he has more elbow room now to delve into Africa, because there are issues that have to be solved in Africa. I'm sure you will see a greater hand of the U.S. in the Somali situation for various reasons, I mean, including resources. In the East Africa region, generally...
He read the Riot Act.
Yes. In the East Africa region...
Some non-conformist leaders.
Yes. There will also be an issue because the East Africa region is slowly emerging as an oil-producing area from Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. So there will be greater focus in this region. And one of the areas where he spoke about critically was less reliance of the state of America on foreign oil, and that would say probably Arab oil. He would look this way for that kind of support.
All right.
And I see him making a visit to the East Africa region.
He can come for a week.
He would not maybe a week, but he will definitely take a visit around Africa. That he will
come to. He needs to pay a visit. He will come as president.
I see it slightly differently. I see it slightly differently.
Yes.
This is on account of the fact we go back to the nature of the political parties. Obama, ideologically speaking,
yes,
is a liberal, and that is the basis of democratic parties. To understand the politics in the United States, the polarization in the United States is actually best. It's like, to put it very simply, Uganda is polarized between 2 political parties right now.
Yes.
On the one hand, you've got NRM, right, and on the other hand,
FDC.
you've got FDC.
In the US?
In US, you have got the Republicans
and the Democrats,
who are conservative, and the Democrats who are
progressive.
Who are liberal. Now, actually, when you have a Republican in office, he is better for Africa. When you've got a Democrat like Obama in office, that's bad news for Africa.
Well, but Clinton is a Democrat. He gave us
no. Actually, let me tell you something. The AGOA, the PEPFAR and stuff, and all that stuff
had been voted before.
Had actually came
by George Bush.
All came under Bush.
Bush did
implementation was later.
All that came under Bush.
Yes.
Even implementation was under Bush.
Okay.
Why? Because you see, the Republicans, because of their conservative and aggressive nature, okay, want to dominate the world. So it does not matter whether you're a dictator, for as long as you stand with them.
That's the Democrat.
That's
the Republican.
To protect the American interests, they'll be behind you.
Right.
The
Democrats.
The Democrats, because of their liberal thinking, right? That's why you see when Obama came in, for him, and the message is always, they tie aid to democratic, the romantic,
the democratic CV.
They're not really for them. They're not like Republicans. The Republicans are hard nosed. That's why the Republicans, for example, did not mind the late what's the name?
Ronald Reagan?
No, the leader of Libya.
Mr.
Gaddafi. Even though Gaddafi gave them a bit of problems.
Okay.
You see, but Gaddafi stood on the right side of the fight for terrorism.
Well, our time is up.
It's interesting that that
half a minute.
Yes, is correct, but it is based on the old geopolitical formation across the world. The world is moving from geopolitics to chronopolitics, where politics is based on time and performance, rather than, because what has happened is that you have seen that there is a rise of Islamic fundamentalism. There is a fall of many of the dictators that had been supported by the Republican Party. We have seen Gaddafi and sons go down. We have seen Libya, Mubarak and sons go down. We have seen Ben Ali and sons go down. So this is there is a reconstruct of the entire geopolitical formation, and we are moving towards a performance-based system that will be more compatible with the changing world of tomorrow.
A meritocracy.
Yes, that is probably moving away from what the Republicans had held near and dear to their hearts.
And that is why, if you listen to the discussion that's going on right now,
yes,
the American pundits and analysts are saying that you guys, the Republicans, you've lost.
Yes,
you've lost.
You need to review. Yes,
because you need to review.
Yeah, that's true.
Your stand.
All right, that's true. Yes.
You see, the world is no longer evil versus
good versus evil,
yes,
or the axis of evil, as Ronald Reagan or Bush would put it. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, we have to move forward. But before we go to hear from the listeners, talk to us about this poll inaccuracy. They would say it was too close. There's a big gap, 100 votes. Otherwise, it's going to be 70.
Actually,
it was close. It was still close.
The outcome,
the electoral votes, you have about 2 million.
Yeah, that is still very close.
There's a gap of 100 electoral votes.
About 100.
But
how did they get it wrong?
No, they didn't get it wrong. You see, because of the structure that I never to explain, you can actually have you may not win the popular vote.
Yes.
In the system.
And win the electoral college.
And win the electoral college.
The exit polls even consistently marked it at a tie. That was one. And whenever Obama was leading, it was by 1%. Now, when the actual poll, the result actually came,
it was different.
It was completely at variance with what the exit polls had been asked.
How do you explain that?
I'll explain this. Okay. You see, the thing here, it's about strategy. If you know, and this is where the strategists of Obama outplayed Romney. You see, the thing is this: you go and concentrate on the states
that you don't trust enough.
No, the states that have the largest population.
Yes.
Because when you concentrate on the states that have the largest population, you're going to have the largest electoral votes. It doesn't matter whether you win that state by 1 vote.
You get all the electoral votes.
You see?
Okay, let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can call in our number 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Spectrum, hello?
Edmond.
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening, thanks for the guests in the studio.
Yes, sir.
Very brilliant discussion, and honestly, reflecting what I would have said. But mine is a very simple one. Okay, 2 points. One, for as long as we still have the peasants in Uganda who can be handed into a crowd, given a t-shirt, and told that things will be good until wait for 5 years, you won't get such a discussion meriting into our well-being. Then I was slightly taken aback when one of your callers said he voted for the ruler. Good evening.
Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name?
Yo.
Come again? Okay, interview, yes? Nakawa, yes?
Before Africa was from America,
Okay, philosophical contribution. The Spectrum, hello.
Yes, good evening, brother Edmond.
Good evening, my friend. Your name?
Actually, this is Mansour.
Yes, ma'am.
For the brilliant discussion. But actually, I'm asking the gentleman that is there anything actually good enough for us to celebrate among our pictures? And then the second issue is about the hegemonic actually stability. I'm thinking America actually falling through that. Because number one, their economy is not stable. The rest that they are actually almost drinking. They're like, you know that. Then the last one is actually the lesson that can run their election. Anyway, with that, they are organized. Because for really, the functions, institutions are more powerful than the individuals. Thank you, sir.
Institutions versus individuals. Obama spoke about it in Ghana. Spectrum, hello.
Yes, good
evening, your name, my friend?
I'm called AM going through from Kenya.
AM.
Yes, for their duration. But it's also a challenge. The so-called hearing, they don't want to participate in your politics. After all, they go in maybe a conference in their chambers, then they criticize. If you shun politics, that means you are also shunning your country for politically to grow. So you should also learn this. But you, the court hearings, the lawyer, thank you.
Spectrum, hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
Robert Mujuni.
Yes, Robert.
I have the points to make. The first has already been made, the quality of electorates. People here, once you approach them with a t-shirt in one hand and a skewer on the other, that is it. They don't care about, they forget all about health services, all the suffering for 5 years. They completely forget. That is one. The quality of candidates also matter. I never, all throughout the campaign, President Obama was addressing Romney and Governor Romney. Absolute respect for each other. And they were able to face each other and talk about issues, which is not the case here. So we need to take lessons from that. And also some reforms need to be made. For instance, we could have a system where the salary of parliamentary candidates is set even before they go to parliament. So they know that when I get there, I'm going to earn this amount of money, and I'm going to do this and that. Secondly, we should be considered the unofficial model of government, where ministers are not members of parliament, so that you get Rottweilers in parliament.
Caller tonight, Spectrum, hello. Hello. Yes, your name?
Hello, this is Steve calling from Monica.
Yes, Stephen.
One, I thank first of all the way you are handling it, but I think Obama and his colleagues, they are different to our Ugandans here. Because the way they concentrate on the issues, but you find here in Uganda in Africa, they just change insult.
All right.
There's no people.
Okay.
So, let's the next time be on the issues, not on the insult.
Okay.
If you are challenging the income, because the moment you are doing the role, so up apart.
Okay. Thank you very much. Skills in politics and other things.
Oh, yes. I'll start with the first
Jimmy.
Jimmy it was, who talked about the peasants in Uganda being the electorates. Actually, let me tell you something. I think there's good news. If you look at the trend in the by-elections, the recent by-elections, we are moving away from. I think we are underestimating these so-called peasants. They are beginning to vote on issues. Look, the ruling government lost how many of the by-elections?
7 or 6.
Quite a few, quite a number.
Quite a number. I think the majority. I think 90%.
Yeah, of course, some people are beginning to say it casts a shadow on the mainstream election. That maybe there was fiddling. That's why they lost the.
That doesn't. In fact, I don't think. I think it's very good for the electoral process. If you look at the circumstances surrounding the manner in which government lost these by-elections, one, the peasants are based, in my view, I stand to be corrected, I think are casting a protest vote against the government because they are saying, government, you are not handling our matters properly.
Okay.
You know, inflation is high, there's a lot of corruption, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I think there's hope. There's hope in our electoral system.
All right.
I think we should not underestimate the peasants.
I think one day we should have those debates, Byenkya versus Museveni at the Sheraton, facing each other.
Well, I think, well, I was very disappointed. Like, well, I shouldn't apologize for voting for Museveni. I did, but I was disappointed when the civil societies organized a debate between
we organized it actually.
Yes, between Byenkya and Museveni refused to turn up.
Maybe I should organize one, and whichever candidate doesn't turn up,
I think he owes it to us.
We'll get somebody else.
He owes it to us to do that.
I think Kenya has introduced the American-style political debates.
I'll bring a comedian to represent the absentee person.
I think I'll get my colleague to...
Yeah, then I think there was a question that has been raised by Mansour, and I will also refer back to Jimmy's point about peasants. I think too much time has been laid on trying to blame the electorate rather than trying to focus on the system. The system that is in place today was designed primarily, it's an offshoot of the colonial system that was designed to dominate and exploit resources from the ground, not to transfer resources to the ground. That is one factor. Two, we may be looking at the peasantry from a very patronizing perspective that they do not know what they're doing, yet they consistently have been involved in all changes that have taken place throughout. But a system that brings you a man or a woman who is supposed to speak authoritatively on legal issues, on infrastructure, on health issues, on education, on IT, on farming, really creates a jack of all trades and a master of none. And the man is subjected to, or is compelled to consistently lie and to bribe his way for him to perform. Such a system needs review, where somebody can be subjected to one area of authority and expected to deliver upon that. Because we cannot have a system that focuses on pure identity, that is simply geographic in nature, forgetting that interests have moved beyond geographic borders of constituencies or areas but have become national in perspective. Are we therefore able to come up with a system that is able to, one, embrace our diversity as peoples and our diverse interests? The interests of farmers of a farmer in Kabale and the interests of a farmer in Tororo are the same. Are we able to have a system that can convert that interest? Or do we have the system that must say that if I am elected in this area, I must of necessity be from that tribe, whether it is purely as a matter of identity or if efficient leadership? We must review the system. We cannot change the people. The people, like you said, will grow organically and there's been improvement. And I cannot blame the peasantry. I cannot blame the people of any region about how they vote. But that is them.
In fact, if you look at the voting patterns in the last general election,
it was different. Museveni was apparently, he got some 90% in some constituencies.
In certain constituencies, but you know, for example, he performed. His performance improved incrementally, though it was, and in some cases, actually significantly. In areas where, like in the north, you know, where he traditionally
they didn't like him.
They didn't like him much, and why? Because his change of heart. He listened to the electorate at that time, and chose to pursue negotiations with Kony, you know, over the military solution.
Yes.
And when Kony was isolated and
the war ended apparently.
Yeah, and then he left the area.
Peace, and then
there was peace. Then infrastructure development started taking place there, and he reaped the benefits. But conversely, then he started losing popularity in Buganda, which was his stronghold. So the politics in Uganda is actually beginning to change. It's moving away from the tribal based to issue based.
Well, but skewers in politics, Muchoma politics, is it still? Though you don't you say it as a significant factor?
Yeah. But you see, the thing is this: it's a long journey. We have started it, right? And it's going.
We'll get there eventually.
But you can see that the signs are are very good. In fact, let me tell you something. If the government, in my view, and I'm predicting this, if the government does not deal with the endemic corruption, which is a sign that they are failing to manage our affairs,
they'll be thrown out.
They are going to be thrown out. And
they'll get 20%.
They are in for a very big surprise in 26.
We have to go. What are midterm elections in half a minute?
Okay, in half a minute. Midterm elections in the United States actually relate to the parliament in the United States. Now, the parliament in the United States, legally speaking or technically speaking, is bicameral.
Two parliaments.
There are two chambers.
Yes.
You have the Senate
and House of Representatives.
And you have House of Representatives. Now, the Senate is elected every 2 years. The senators, every state is entitled to 2 senators. So there are 100 senators. Those ones are elected every 6 years.
We have to go. Our time is up.
The House of Representatives are the senators are elected every 6 years.
Yes.
House of Representatives, they are equivalent to members of Parliament.
Right.
Like in Uganda,
yes.
every Muluka has got a.
Okay. That's a topic for another time.
Every 2 years.
We have to go. Thank you very much, dear guests. Mr. Oscar Kihika, senior partner of Byenkya Kihika and Company Advocates, also former past president of the Uganda Law Society. Thank you very much for coming to Spectrum tonight. You're very knowledgeable about American politics. You won't read that in your label or at your door. Mr. Sammy Gwada from the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, another brain there. Thank you very much for coming to Spectrum, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. Kizito Spectrum. We'll be back tomorrow. Up next is the news in English.
It's the time again to sweat a little for better. It's that moment to